He's been ready, and he's been. It's like he's like, bruh, can you kind of move things along here? I got work to do. Abe Gordon joining us. First off, have you recovered from the peach tree, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. My legs are a little sore the next day, but planning to get back out there later this evening, go for a 4 or 5 mile run. So we're back after it. We got to just keep mileage up, I guess. I don't know.
Well, so what was your time, by the way?
I did 59:28, but there were a few circumstances that slowed me down. I had to take a little bathroom break, mile 4 or so, and then I ran into a couple members of my running group who were doing a party run somewhere towards the back end of the race. So instead of going into my kick and speeding up, we slowed down. We took some pictures. So I was probably closer to 56, 57 minutes if I had kept running. So still pleased, though. We still broke an hour.
I was going to ask what your target time was, and it's breaking an hour for you?
Yeah, that's loosely it. I would have liked to go a little faster, but yeah, breaking an hour is kind of where I'd like to be at. So we're still all right.
Okay, so that was July 4th,
Yeah.
and I have to thank Sam and Greg for putting up with me on July 4th as well. While you were running, they decided it's like, get Nelson on the show. Let's see what he wants to talk about. And so as a spectator and as a cheerleader, they had me on for my perspective. And so, regrettably, that interview is still up. So if you want to go check out Crenshaw and Clarkson and find out what it's like for me to do an old-timey radio voice, as 60,000 folks are passing by me and I'm doing play-by-play of the race. So that's what's on their particular perspective. That was July 4th. The weekend for Atlanta United, you went to RSL, and it was a rough one. I mean, there's no way to couch around it. And the biggest thing, you sit there, you go set piece defending, capital S, capital P, capital D, SPD, set piece defending. 3 goals of the 5 were that way. 5-2 loss out in the mountains, then you come home.
Yeah, the interesting thing was, I was trying to be realistic with my mindset heading into the game. And I said on the pregame show that it could end up like a 5-1 result. And I wouldn't have a problem with that. In my mind, 5-1 is because you get overly aggressive. You're going to need to score. You get pushed up the field, attack, and you get beat here and there. And I'm okay living with that. But that's not what happened. You got beat when you had guys behind the ball. It's a situation that we've seen at every level, whether you're watching high school games, college, lower level professional, high level, whatever it is. You have got to make teams work hard to beat you. That's the frustrating aspect of it. I didn't mind losing 4 goals, 3 goals, whatever the number was going to be. I was in a mindset where I was prepared for that to be the deal. Like, we're going to criticize Atlanta United here, and rightfully so. Let's understand what Real Salt Lake is. And they are quite simply one of the teams that will be contending for the MLS Cup. They have a potential MLS Landon Donovan MVP award winner on their squad. And we obviously saw him get involved on Saturday night as well. So not trying to take away from Real Salt Lake, who is absolutely capable of this type of quality, this type of beatdown, but you didn't make it tough enough for them to beat you. That's what's most frustrating. And you could kind of hear it, like we heard from Rob Valentino post-game. We heard from Dax McCarty, Derek Williams. You could tell, like, I think teams themselves, individual players, are okay if they get beat because they tried this or tried that. I don't think you're okay getting beat in the manner that you did. I mean, completely losing Arango on a set piece, the corner to a guy at the top of the 18 who's got a chance to watch the sunset before delivering the strike. I mean, it's like, what are we doing? And so I don't mind losing that badly. I expected to not get a result in this game, but how the goals came is what's just absolutely most frustrating, and can tell you and show you that there's still a lot of work to be done. And the other aspect of this is you didn't have any designated players. Yeah. Thiago Amada officially gone. We've known about Giakoumakis, and look, we knew, it wasn't a surprise, that Stian Gregerson had the yellow card suspension. But it's impossible, and I mentioned this, I had Jason Longshore on my show yesterday. it's not going to be an easy read of what this team is or can be over the next month. You're also going to lose Caleb Wiley. I know you talked about and will talk about the U.S. Olympic team, and certainly that became official today, but no one's surprised that Wiley's involved, so we can talk about it openly without spoiling the surprise. Yeah. And so you're going to lose him, and the timeline for the window and when guys will actually be able to come in, whoever you bring in with travel and visa and all sorts of other stuff, you're maybe like 4 weeks, 6 weeks before you really get a good look at what this team is. So it's frustrating not to get the result. It's frustrating to make it easy on your opponent, but ultimately not a huge surprise as to how things went Saturday night.
Yeah. Note from U.S. Soccer, the U.S. will prepare for the games at the FC Girondins de Bordeaux. So they're going to be in Bordeaux from July 9 through 20 before moving to Marseille ahead of the opening match against France. And so that's where the Olympic element is. But remember this, and this was also to your point about this match. This was a match where you allow a goal in the first minute, 40-something seconds, and then you got into the rhythm of the match with the roster being what it was and the starting 11 being what it was without any designated players. The adjustments that Rob Valentino and the staff made got you into the rhythm of it, and then you end up with the game-tying goal, and you were 1-1 in this match. You got to the break at 1-1, and you had asserted control. Rob also mentioned when the match was over that traditionally it's at about the 60-minute mark where teams seem to bonk when they get to Rio Tinto and they're playing on the road there. But, yeah, I mean, 3 set pieces, that is going to be the big specter of this whole thing. But you got to see leading into that, though, adjustments made by Rob Valentino and the staff that got you the equalizer after giving up that chaotic first goal. And you had RSL on their heels, but you could not finish the drill.
Well, and that's going to bring up the other issue. And you're right about the 60 minutes. You look at where their next goal came. It was at 59, and then it progresses and it gets worse from there. But you let them off the hook in the first half. And forgetting the first-minute goal aside, you had more than just the one chance that you had. And it was a situation where you looked at it and you're like, you dominated 44 minutes of this half on the road against one of the best teams in the MLS. Like, that's something you should be proud about. But at the same time, you're like, man, it probably should be like 2-1 or 3-1 Atlanta United. And the fact that it's not doesn't bode well for what to expect in the second half. And so you could kind of see it coming. There were opportunities to be had there that you didn't quite finish, and that cost you all the same. Look, the team was prepared. And they were ready. And again, with the exception of the first 52 seconds, they executed very strongly in that first half. Look, without Giakoumakis, without Thiago Almada, almost everything has to go right in the buildup right now for you to get a team goal. And I'm not trying to discredit anyone out there for Atlanta United. There's not an expectation, maybe with the exception of Saba, I guess. There's not an expectation, at least for me, for a lot of moments of individual brilliance. And to me, that means things have to go right on multiple stages of the buildup and the attack for you to finally get the ball in a position to finish a goal. And it's just so tough to ask for everything to go right. I mean, you can do so much right, and then the final pass a bit behind, and then the guy's skying it over the goal or putting it wide, whatever it may be. And so just very difficult to find goals right now. And look, credit to what Daniel Rios has done. He's got, 4 goals in 6 matches. He had a beautiful back heel on the goal that did eventually come from Saba. He's played well, but he just requires so much delivery and so much help getting him the ball in that position. And to do it without someone special like a Giakoumakis a moment could provide, and certainly like we've seen for 2+ years with Thiago Almada, it's just so much to ask everything to be right multiple times per game. And that, I think that's what showed in the first half, where you had situations where you were aggressive, you were high pressing. It caused some turnovers, and it got you into some good situations. It really did. But still, you couldn't find a way to finish. And you knew, at least I felt at 1-1 at halftime, you're like, man, feels like a lost opportunity. They played well. Did you really think they were going to keep it up at that level? I didn't. A lot of times it might go the other way, right? You feel like, man, can we just get to halftime and get a break? This team's pressing on us, and we're lucky if we can get to halftime with whatever scoreline we're sitting at. It's kind of the other way. You almost didn't want halftime. You were playing so well, and you didn't want the opponent to come out fresh with a chance to adjust. But that is what we saw, and certainly things switched there at halftime for Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, and you end up with the big loss on the road. It was once again, it was the 5-3-2 or 5-2, 3-5-2, 5-3-2, however you want to call it. You had the three center backs of Ronald, Derek, and Noah, and Ronald something out of necessity, where you had to have him in, considering schedule compression and where we are right now. It was Caleb, Noah, Derek, Ronald, Brooks. That was your back five that could flow up the wings. Dax and Bart in the midfield, and then up top, Shande Silva, Sabalob, Janitza, Daniel Rios. Daniel Rios, by the way, punched an 8.2 on SofaScore. You were talking about Daniel. And one of the things that I also don't want folks to forget is that in this situation, going up against a very, very tough RSL team, you continued to try things. You continued to be brave. And that was one of the things that offensively, to your point about Daniel Rios, it's like you're still trying things, and it's like, okay, you're going to try to work over the top to try to get things to Rios, to get him fed, to continue to end up with what you were getting there. It's just that, to your point, in that first half, you had to be clinical, put things away, get that lead to give you that buffer, because when you get to 60, that's when it seems like the world will tilt when you make that visit to Rio Tinto.
Yeah, it's also a confidence thing. It's also Real starting to question themselves if they are down 2-1, down 3-1 somehow at halftime. And yes, there's a buffer in terms of if you make a mistake, you might still have a lead, or you might still be holding on to a point. But I think the mentality of it is something as well. And for Real Salt Lake to kind of have the mentality of, all right, we kind of withstood 44 minutes of, and yes, we had the 1-goal lead at the very start, but withstanding 44 minutes of just one directional traffic, it felt like, to then get out of there. And it's like, all right, we get to wipe the slate clean, 0-0, 1 half to go. And these guys are tired and will be tired within 20 minutes. I think that gave them a mental boost as well, heading into halftime, knowing what was in front of them in the second half. So, look, I mean, if anything, and look, we said this when it was Gonzalo Pineda. We'll say the same thing here when it is Rob Valentino. I don't think the second half letdown has much to do with Rob Valentino. When you're letting the supposed front runner for the MVP award just run free off of a restart, and it's just like wide open in the back post, like that's not a managerial call. And so the players have got to be more organized. They've got to be more responsible. You do wonder if Stian Gregerson makes a difference there. Let me say this. I don't wonder. I know he would have made a difference there. How could you not? Mike Conti posted something after the game. I think he had said, like, Atlanta United has given up like 9 set-piece goals this season, or whatever the number may be. And just, I do wonder, and I'm too lazy to look up the stat. I kind of posted it hoping that Mike Conti would look it up for me, but I think he's got better things to do with his time as well. But I do wonder, of those 9, how many Stian Gregerson was on the field for, and how much that could help. I mean, we talked about it pregame. Like, Derek Williams is going to be tasked with keeping this group together with still a very young Noah Cobb on one side, and Ronald Hernandez, who I traditionally don't think of as a center back, on the other.
But I don't think you had much of a choice, considering schedule compression and absences and all this kind of stuff. You're having to plot for a match on Tuesday, and then having to plot for the road trip to Montreal all at the same time.
Well, I understand why they did it. And look, if we're being honest, and maybe others feel differently, just considering where we are in the season, both in terms of MLS and in terms of U.S. Open Cup, if I had to lose this game on the road at Real Salt Lake in MLS play to win at home against Indy 11 and move on to the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup, like, that's a trade that I'm going to make.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people may not feel the same way, but I do. because no matter what you put out there, it was always going to be tough to beat Real Salt Lake in the form that they've been on, really for the majority of the season at home. Moving to the semis, though, of the U.S. Open Cup and potentially getting within 2 games of a trophy in what has been an otherwise frustrating season, you got to go for that. And some of the roster decisions were made with that in mind. There's no doubt about that.
You mentioned Open Cup, and literally you're 3 wins from a trophy. Right now, you are 3 wins from a trophy that gets you into CONCACAF, and with the revenue that you have coming in with the players that have departed, plus the discussions about other players possibly departing, plus the idea of whether it is a player or some kind of financial, and this is and I'm talking about the Ezequiel Barco transaction that's being talked about right now, where right now there is a discussion involving Ezequiel Barco going from River Plate to Spartak Moscow. Don't ask me how that connection was made, but right now, if I'm Atlanta United and I see that is an idea that is close to coming to fruition, I ain't wanting nothing in rubles, brother. That's just not going to happen right now. So I'm going to want something more concrete from River Plate if this is going to go down. Do I end up with a player instead of the money and then let River Plate sort out getting rubles from Spartak Moscow? Do I get a little bit more than I would with a percentage of the pass? You're going to have some resources available to you next season, the tail end of this season and next, that can help you in CONCACAF competition if you win your next 3 matches here. So this is a big turn that you talk about here starting Tuesday.
Well, the interesting thing is if you can beat the Indy 11, which you hopefully can accomplish, like, even if the MLS team wins on the other side of that bracket, Seattle at Sacramento, like Seattle's a beatable squad as well. And so, I know you got some other teams. LAFC is still floating around. That obviously would be the big bad wolf in terms of reaching the finals. But Seattle's beatable. Sacramento should be. I mean, you have in front of you what could be a path to that title game. And again, whether or not you feel like the U.S. Open Cup is as good as a trophy as something else, it still gets you some very big benefits for the next season. And that is something you cannot argue. You may not be happy with it, but the benefits are clear. And so, look, this is a situation where you're frustrated to lose certain players. There's no denying that. You have done good in a business sense, though, over the past month or however long it's been since Giakoumakis was sold, combining with this Thiago Almada deal. You're going to have money, and you also now have time. The fact that you're making these moves early before the MLS window opens, you now have an idea of who you want to go after and some time to scout them, talk deals, and all that stuff before you can officially get going. So I'm very interested to see what sort of decisions are made, who they bring in. I mean, if you just remember the transfer window last year, the additions that they made, and while ultimately the season didn't end up as some great midseason maneuvering, I was very pleased with the additions they made at the deadline last year. And that was when you're dealing with quite a bit more restrictions than you are right now. And so I am very optimistic and interested to see where Garth Lagerwey, Carlos Bocanegra, and the entire front office and technical staff ends up going here, because I think there's an opportunity. And look, you're not going to make some additions that get you into the top 4. That has come and gone already. But are there some additions that can make you to the right side of the playoff line and then dangerous come playoff time? I think so. I don't know who. I don't have a name for you. I'm not going to pretend to have a name for you. I'll wait until they give me a name, and then I'll do a quick Wikipedia check on that dude and see what's going on. But yeah, I am very optimistic and hopeful about what this roster could look like in, say, 6 weeks or however long it takes to get players not only signed, but in here training with the club, up to speed, visas, and all that stuff. So Yeah, I think that is, and I mentioned it, as much as it's going to be frustrating over the next month or so without some of these key playmakers, I think when you get past that on the other side, again, maybe too little too late to make a serious run up the table, but just get into the playoffs and see what happens.
Abe Gordon at Abe Gordon at 929 The Game. What are the broadcast plans coming up for you the next couple of days?
Yeah, we're actually rolling into Kennesaw tomorrow night. Pre-game show, the Five Stripes Countdown, going to start at 6 o'clock before we hand things over to Mike Connie and Jason Longshore. And we got the post-game after. Hopefully we can be talking, obviously, about a victory. We'll be keeping an eye on some of the other games as well. In the U.S. Open Cup, certainly we'll be talking a little bit about Euros and Copa America as well. So definitely locked in there. And then I'm actually out of town going on a baseball trip with my father on the weekend. So I will not be around for CF Montreal, but Garrett Chapman will be handling the pre and post game duties as he usually does alongside me. So he might have to go solo dolo. Maybe we have a special guest on the weekend, but however it works out, we're going to have all sorts of coverage for you as we continue. And we'll probably start to look a little bit deeper into the Olympic tournament as well, especially now that Caleb Wiley will be heading off. Certainly a lot of interest. Our old buddy Miles Robinson.
Who?
One of the not to throw you or I under the bus, but
Who?
One of Miles.
Who?
What?
Who?
Well, now because of the age limit stuff, we just get to call him the old guy on the team. So
yeah, one of them.
Excited about that. Yeah, one of the three old guys. So. It'll be interesting. We'll definitely be breaking down some of those decisions as well.
Yeah, that dude that used to be here that is now assumed the role of an FC Cincinnati player. I don't know who you're talking about. You mentioned a name and it just kind of fuzzed out the second you mentioned a name. So, where are you going with your dad?
This year we are going to Houston. So we've got a couple games to the Astros, which thankfully that stadium is domed and air conditioned. So very pleased with that. And then we're going to check out a couple minor league stadiums as well. Yeah. We always hit the minor leagues. So I want to say they're the Sugarland
Skeeters.
Yeah. I think we're going to see them. Yeah.
Nice. You got to get the gear too. So that's you got to get your Sugarland Skeeters gear, and
I think they call the Space Cowboys now. Sugarland Space Cowboys. Yeah,
the Space Cowboys, and I think their logo is really sweet, if I remember correctly, because I was doing a search looking for cheap MILB gear the other day. So
it's an astronaut with a cowboy hat on, kind of.
Yeah, you can't go
kind of in that realm. Yeah.
Well, just enjoy the trip with your dad. Obviously, going to minor league ballparks and sharing the baseball experience with your dad is always very, very cool. Stop talking to me and get to work because I know that folks are going to yell at you.